This morning we're talking about Hosea still. We're in Hosea chapter 3. It's only 5 verses long for the whole chapter. It's one of the shorter chapters we got. But Hosea, to recap, is a prophet whose ministry is a living illustration of how awful Israel has been to its God, to Yahweh, who has betrothed her to himself as a bride, and she has gone after other lovers. So, without much ado, Hosea chapter 3. Starting in verse 1, Then the Lord said to me, Go again, love a woman who is loved by her husband, yet an adulteress, even as the Lord loves the sons of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love raisin cakes. So I bought her for myself for 15 shekels of silver and a homer and a half of barley. Then I said to her, You shall stay with me for many days, you shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man, so I will also be toward you. For the sons of Israel will remain for many days, without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, or without ephod or household idols. Afterward the sons of Israel will return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and they will come trembling to the Lord and to his goodness in the last days. So Hosea, the prophet, is told to go and redeem his wife Gomer, which is, through the adjustments in language and naming in history, has just become an unfortunate name. Because I hear Gomer and my brain finishes it with Gomer Pyle, and I don't think Hosea would do well married to Gomer Pyle. So Hosea is told to go and redeem his wife, to purchase her back, because she has returned herself to prostitution. This narrative always reminds me how twisted we Westerners have the ideas of love and marriage and romance. The Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Old Testament, it translates that word for love as agape, one of those few Greek words we know. And if you remember, we talked on Sunday at the beginning of the month, I think it was the 4th, about how God's agape love is actually a choosing love. We tend to think it's unconditional, but there's still requirements, so it can't really work the way we tend to think it does. So it's a choosing love. He chooses to put his love on us and to love us. As you can imagine, Hosea is not likely to have been thrilled about this situation and loving this adulterous woman as he has been commanded to do. But out of obedience, he does. And it indicates in verse 1 that he loved her before, actively did the things which are proof of love. I would be emotionally devastated if I were Hosea in his shoes. That would crush me. I imagine Hosea trying to bargain with God. Like, can I just go do the Ezekiel life illustration thing? Like, I'll lay on my side for a year. That's fine. I'll make the gross bread, whatever. Just this is horrendous and heart-wrenching. But Hosea doesn't record that side of anything. We have no idea Hosea's actual emotional response to any of this. Jeremiah is the only prophet who gives us that kind of inside look into the emotional turmoil of being a prophet for God. So we have to be careful not to try and read in those kind of emotions into the narrative. Otherwise, we'll twist this away from what it's intended to be. This prophetic book is constructed to keep our focus on the faithful love of God to an unfaithful, idolatrous, covenant-breaking people. Sexual immorality, we're going to talk about that a little bit here. Sexual immorality and idolatry go hand in hand in the Bible. That's thus the whole prostitution illustration. And it's partly because of the sexually immoral practices of many of these false religions, but because God has betrothed Israel to himself by turning to other gods. The Israelites were turning to other husbands. They were turning to other lovers to fulfill their desires. Thus, the inclusion of raisin cakes in verse 1. You read verse 1, it says, Even as the Lord loves the sons of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love raisin cakes. It sounds weird. Like, why does God hate this particular baked good? Is God against raisins? Is it because they're not grapes anymore? They're supposed to just be discarded. But the inclusion of raisin cakes in verse 1 references to how in Eastern cultures raisins are considered and used as an aphrodisiac. Thus, the whole sexual morality tied to the idolatry piece. Those raisins, though, are delicious. The ones in the Middle East, just Just saying. Another thing of interest is the price. The price that Hosea pays to buy Gomer back. It would seem that she has found herself at auction on the slave trading block. And remember, slavery then is not the same as we consider it here in America now. We consider slavery usually in light of the 1800s, 1700s, and what all happened here and how awful that was. A little different back then, the different kind of caste system. But she has still offered herself up as a slave, and she had to be purchased out of slavery. She had to be redeemed. One commentator I found said that it's believed that the price Hosea paid altogether amounts to 30 pieces of silver. That's very interesting. That's the shekels and the barley together. The illustrated price paid to redeem God's bride from slavery is correlated to the price paid to betray God to death on a cross. That's fascinating. Again, I don't know how they came up to that conclusion, but fascinating nonetheless. Gomer is then told that she's going to stay with Hosea for many days and that they are not going to engage in sexual intimacy. This is connected to rites of ceremonial cleanliness. But notice that God does not command that she dies. Right? This is the Old Testament. People die for this kind of thing. Adulteresses are stoned. Even the barley reference goes back to Numbers 5 and the offering for jealousy, which could result in the death of a defiled woman. This speaks to the loyal love, the Hesed love of God for his chosen people. He has chosen the people, and he has chosen to put his love on them, and he is faithful. He is loyal to that because he's loyal to himself. Jeremiah 31:3 in the ESV says it this way: I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, I have continued my faithfulness to you. These people are going to go a long time without their temple, without their political system, just like Gomer is going to go many days without intimacy with her husband. But she isn't being put to death. There's mercy. Instead, she's being redeemed and being brought back into the marriage. The people of God are going to be redeemed and brought back into the family of God. And after their time of discipline, they're going to be brought back. Then they're going to seek the Lord and look to David. And that points to the Davidic covenant of the promised Messiah. This is the same Messiah that will be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver and still redeem them with his precious blood on the cross. Through Jesus, the Messiah, the chosen people of God are purchased from their slavery to sin, made clean, and brought back into being the bride of Christ. And when we recognize that we, in this narrative, we're Gomer, we will do as verse 5 concludes. We will come trembling to the Lord and to his goodness.